Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average pun-making swearwolf that loves to explore the spookier things in life.
Hey everybody, I'm John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
All right, here we go. Oh, this is going to sound funny, John. What's up, ghouls, gals, and all of our hypnotic pals? In today's episode, we'll be discussing neurolinguistic programming, meditation, hypnosis, and using hypnosis for healing. What is neurolinguistic programming? What are the benefits of using hypnosis? How can meditations be used in conjunction with the changing seasons? Join us, along with our special guest, to find out.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more. All right, bring us back.
All right, welcome back everybody. Like Ashley said, we have a special guest with us tonight. Her name is Tiffany. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Sweet.
Welcome, Tiffany. It comes to us. She is the mastermind behind Blue Lotus Mind. We're so happy to have you here. Listeners, bear with me. My voice is slaughtered tonight, but we're going to make it through, okay? I swear it's me.
She's doing it all for you guys.
I'm doing it for you guys. But I really also wanted to talk to Tiffany, especially after just like being on her YouTube for like many, many evenings. I really wanted to have a conversation with her because I loved it all. So, Tiffany, welcome. Can you tell us more about what Blue Lotus Mind is?
Yeah, so I help people overcome self-sabotage, limiting beliefs, trauma, emotional baggage, and I predominantly use techniques like hypnosis and other techniques like NLP that allow us to dig into the unconscious mind and really get to the root of the problem so that you don't have to be stuck in the same place for like years on end or talking about the same problem over and over. But we can actually, like, if you think of like a limiting belief, like a weed in your garden, we can pull it out by the root and just get rid of it.
That is awesome. Did you have to get any kind of specific special training to be able to work with hypnosis and NLP?
Yeah, so I'm certified in neurolinguistic programming, practitioner, I'm at master practitioner level, and then I'm certified in hypnosis as well.
What is neurolinguistic programming?
So it is really the study of so the neuro is like the brain, how beliefs are created, where emotions come from, what emotions mean. Linguistics is our language. So how do the words that we use, how do those get processed in our mind to either validate or unvalidate our belief systems and whatnot? And then how does both of those together lead to our programming, which is ultimately our habits, our routines, our actions that we take. So I like it because where most people, when they want to change their life, they focus on the habit, like, oh, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to do more of this habit or less of this habit. And then they kind of fall off the bandwagon. It's because those habits are the outcome of the equation, not the inputs to the equation. And so when we change the inputs, then we get a different outcome.
Sounds like you're speaking my language on all of the topics. I'm like, yep, that's me.
Self-sabotage? Yeah, right here. Hi.
Emotional baggage? Yep,
Right?
check that 5 times.
Check. Yep, all me.
So when you talk about, because I'm really curious about that, we've talked about a little bit about like weight loss. We're not typically like a weight loss podcast, but we've talked about guests that have overcome some really phenomenal, things. And one of the things has been like weight loss. And I know you kind of give an example, but how does that really play out with like neuro-linguistic programming?
So a lot of people, and this is like, I'm just going to preface this by saying my degree is actually in exercise science. I was a
Nice.
personal trainer. I was in the fitness world for 20 years before I made the swap to just working with people's minds. So keep in mind that I'm saying that with this background. But I think while people like to simplify weight loss down to like, if your calories in is less than your calories out, you'll lose weight. And that is the ideal equation. However, we are not like linear beings by any means, right? We're very complex beings. And so when we don't take into account the other things, that can stall people on their weight loss journey or any journey. It can stall them in their finances if they're starting a business or a side hustle or relationships. Like if we don't look at the underlying factors that can impact that equation, then it doesn't matter how many calories you cut or how much you work out, your body isn't going to let it go. So like in the weight loss, for example, if you have trauma, and trauma is part of the human condition, so we all have it, especially after the last 3 years, right? A global event like the pandemic is considered traumatic, and, lockdowns and everything else that came with it. So if we're carrying this emotional baggage, bullying, abuse, not feeling worthy, anything like that, it actually gets stored in the body. And because it gets stored as a toxin and our body tries to keep us healthy and survive, it gets like shuttled into fat cells because fat cells are kind of like a buffer, right? And so the toxins can't essentially poison our body through the fat cells. So when we're carrying a lot of emotional baggage, then we put on weight. And then also like carrying that emotional baggage is stressful to the body. So then we release stress hormones, which causes us to put on weight specifically around our belly area. And then there's other things that play in too. So like I've worked with a lot of people who have been sexually abused or assaulted or sex trafficked in some cases. And one of the ways that they protect themselves from a future event like that happening is to put on weight so they appear unattractive to a future predator. There's another school of thought, which I have seen with some of my clients, that if people are not fully accepting of themselves and they are afraid to like fully be themselves in the world, they will attempt to kind of quote unquote claim their space in the world by becoming physically bigger. And that's how they like become the big person that they want to be, is they do it physically instead of energetically. And so until we get to the root of all these problems, like the fear of standing out or the fear of being attacked or any of those things, the body will hold on to weight. So you might lose weight, but your body is breaking down. You're basically burning off like water weight, or your body starts burning down muscle to use as the fuel source, and you're going to plateau at some point. And like similar things apply. It doesn't matter where you're sabotaging yourself or where you're getting stalled in your life. That's why like working with the mind, and specifically the unconscious mind, is so powerful to creating long-term change, is because we're looking at all these other factors and we're not making everything just like a black and white linear equation.
That makes so much sense. I feel like you're speaking to me directly. I mean, you are, but not really. When there's an imbalance in the body and we talk about holding onto trauma within our energy, that's going to manifest physically in some way. When we talk about like the mental work within neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, I guess for me, how do you even start with hypnosis? Is it really hard to get people to be receptive to that?
So the people who come to work with me, by the time they come to work with me, they've already like either binged on my YouTube or my TikTok, or like binged somewhere on my content. And they're like, okay, you clearly know what you're talking about. I'm willing to work with you. So everybody has the power to be hypnotized because everybody is already in a state of hypnosis in some form. And a lot of people are afraid of the term hypnosis because they think of like the old weird guy on stage who's going to like make you come up and like quack like a duck or like, bark like a dog or whatever. But that would be like saying Hollywood is like real life, right? Like that is a very entertainmentized version of hypnosis. So for everybody to understand what hypnosis is, you have your conscious mind and you have your unconscious mind. The conscious mind is the part of the mind that you're aware of. Like it's the voice that you hear, like, oh, she's talking right to me, or like, I would never use hypnosis. You know, that part of your mind is your conscious mind. And most people think it's in control because that's the part they kind of hear every day, but that's only 4% of your mind's capacity. Your unconscious mind, 96% of your mind's capacity, is your belief systems, your emotions, where your memories are stored. It runs your body. It's when you find yourself getting triggered, it's something in the unconscious mind. Now, the unconscious mind doesn't have any logic or reason. Anything that gets into the unconscious mind is taken to be true. And so you can imagine that you wouldn't want just anybody having access to your unconscious mind. So in between the two, there is a gatekeeper. And when the gatekeeper is closed, nobody can access your unconscious mind, including you. And so most people, like if you didn't feel safe working with me or you didn't trust me, then I could not hypnotize you. And so the people who are like, oh, I can't be hypnotized, they just shut that gatekeeper.
They like barricade the door.
Yeah, they're just like, no. But what they don't realize is that they're opening it for somebody. Like ads that we see, whether it's on TV or the radio or social media, that's a form of hypnosis. The government, Hollywood, the school system, church, our own belief systems. Like if you have a belief system, if you believe that you're not worthy or that you're not good enough or that you have to be perfect, that you have hypnotized yourself to create that belief. So that's where you're under a state of hypnosis. And so you open the gatekeeper essentially for the wrong things or things that disempower you. What we do with hypnosis is it's as simple as distracting the conscious mind so that the gatekeeper opens. And this is where most people don't realize that they're being hypnotized. Like, I'm going to give you the most common example. If you watch regular TV or any TV that has commercials, there will, at some point, I think I counted the other day during like one episode of Yellowstone, there was like a drug commercial every commercial break, right? So like Rinvoq or this one or that one, whatever it's for. What they'll do is they'll have like happy people on the screen and they'll have like the voiceover narrator, but then they'll also have words on the screen that say something different to what the narrator's saying. So your conscious mind gets distracted reading the text, and then your unconscious mind is susceptible to whatever the voice says. Because now the gatekeeper opens because the conscious mind is distracted. A couple years ago, I was watching a show with my mom and this shingles commercial came on. And I can't remember what the text on the screen said, but the voice said, if you've ever had chickenpox, you have shingles. And in NLP, that's what we call an embedded command. Like the you have shingles is an embedded command. And the next day, my mom said, I think I need to go to my doctor and get checked out for shingles. And I was like, why? Do you have symptoms? She's like, no, but I'm just thinking I might have it. And I was like, you totally just got hypnotized by that commercial last night, right? Because then the voice said, go talk to your doctor, blah, blah, blah. So
That's tricky.
Yeah. So anytime the conscious mind is distracted, whether it's distracted watching a movie or you're driving and listening to a song, like one of the sneakiest ways that we disempower ourselves is by singing along to songs in the car and not paying attention to what the lyrics are. Like if you listen to the lyrics of songs these days, they're terrible. Like they're so disempowering. And I figured this out. I went through a really bad breakup about almost 10 years ago. And I remember my breakup song. I can't even remember what the song was, but the lyrics were, I'm nothing without you. And I remember I'm like driving and I belted those words out, like, one of those like angry, rageful, like broken heart singing songs. And I was like, wait a second, that is not true at all. Like, why am I saying this? Right. So the songs that we sing along to can hypnotize us. But when we do things like guided meditations or visualizations, or if we can confuse the conscious mind over here, then we can go into a state of hypnosis to work with the unconscious mind to heal the baggage. And so that's ultimately what I do, is I essentially use guided visualizations to help people access their own unconscious mind. It's not even me accessing it. It's helping people lift that gatekeeper so they can access it on their own, and they can pull out the pieces that they don't want in there anymore.
So, what's funny is like years and years and years ago, I actually like made a commitment to myself that I would never listen to or watch commercials again because I was paying attention to kid commercials, what was playing during kid programming. And I was like, oh my gosh, they are totally like trying to manipulate kids watching the show and any of these shows. And then I started paying attention to the commercials during like adult programming. And I don't mean naughty shows, but just like, primetime. And it's like, oh, wow, this is disturbing. And so I stopped listening to or watching commercials. And so when people are like, did you hear about this new thing coming out or this? Da, da, da? And I'm like, nope, I'm so far behind on that stuff. Unfortunately, that means I also miss movies that are coming out unless someone tells me about it, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I've got like a 5.5-month-old son, and like we limit his screen time as it is. But if there is a time where we're sitting watching TV and he's watching with us, or we put on like, Miss Rachel or Bluey on YouTube,
Mhm.
if commercials pop up, we either mute it or we turn the volume
Skip
way
it.
down so he can't hear
Yep.
until the skip button comes up, and then he can watch the show. And like the news is like the worst place that you can be hypnotized, because they just hypnotize you to be anxious all the time.
Yeah, I hate the news too.
I already am, so I don't need to watch the news for that. I'm just kidding.
But it's funny you mentioned the songs because I'm I feel like when it comes to music, people identify with different aspects of a song, whether it be the guitars or the drums or and for me, it's always been the singer. So I pay attention to the words, which can be annoying if I'm in the car with, the family and something comes on and I'm like, this is absolutely disgusting. Change this song. And it's like, what? I'm like, are you even listening to the words? Because you're singing along. Like, do you know what you just said? That's awful. Nope, we change it. So I'm probably so annoyed. And don't get me wrong, my playlist, I have like adult mama playlist where I'm like, I know I shouldn't like this song. But I do because the beat's catchy. But yeah, the words definitely nowadays can be a bit alarming. I love what you said, though, about always being in a state of hypnosis because I think about yoga. It took me back to yoga, where like you take a yoga class. And for me, I get almost sometimes when it's like really when I'm really connecting, I get in like this moving meditation. So then when the yoga teachers are saying positive affirmations or things that are really uplifting, I'm like, why am I about to cry? This shouldn't be getting to me like this. But now it makes sense. They're getting to me on a deeper subconscious level because in that moment, I probably am in a semi hypnotic state. So those things hit a little harder because I find myself at the end of the classes being like, I needed to hear that. That's exactly what I needed to hear. How did they know that? They're so magical.
And the other crazy thing with yoga as well is like we store the emotion in our body, right? And so when we do certain yoga poses or stretches, like women, for example, we have really deep hip sockets. And so we tend to store a lot of our emotion in our hips. Plus, like our womb is near there and we can carry a lot of pain and emotion and whatnot there. And so when you're doing like a hip opener sequence, for example, and this is something I do with my clients, like we'll work with the mind through hypnosis and then we'll work with the body through like breath work or yoga to release the emotion from the body. And so I hear from people like, I was just like laying on the ground and doing like these pelvic tilts back and forth like you told me, but I felt all this emotion come up. Like I just wanted to burst out into tears. And it's like that's what's happening. So when you go to yoga and you get into this like flow state or this meditative state, then your body's releasing baggage while your mind is taking in the affirmations that the teachers are saying. And it's like the perfect combo for healing.
Yeah, I still am trying to reconcile why during certain classes, um, especially in balance. I notice this in balance poses where they're trying to get you to balance in different things. And um, I get really agitated when they over cue, when it's like constant cueing throughout the whole thing. And I get agitated and I have to check myself and be like, why am I getting so mad at them? Like, I have caught myself in my head being like, stop talking, which is funny because if they're talking about anything else, like they could be telling, there was this one teacher that I thought was lovely. She would tell like mythology stories and bring it into how this applies to current life. That wouldn't bother me. If they're uplifting, that doesn't bother me. But when they're speaking like fix this, do that, adjust this, check that, I'm like, stop talking. So I don't know why I get aggravated just with that.
The thing that I would check in with that is like, did you have somebody in your life who constantly corrected you and like maybe made you feel like you weren't good enough, or there was like, you had to be perfect or something like that? Like I would just check in and see if that's, because when we get triggered like that, it's just our unconscious mind saying like, hey, there's a wound here that we need to heal. Like, let's just bring some attention to it. But the fact that you have awareness of it where most people don't is brilliant in itself.
It's funny you say that because I have total authority issues. Like that's an ongoing joke in my house. I do not like to be told what to do. So maybe it's all related.
There you go.
And it probably has nothing to do with any of it, but like I find myself watching videos on YouTube, and it'd be like American Idol auditions or something, and I'll just start crying because I'm so happy for this person who's going through, and I'm like, why? I haven't even watched the show. It's just a stupid clip. Why am I like getting all emotional about this? And I have no, any connection to the story, the person, anything. I don't know. It's just weird. I find that like during concerts as well. Like I'll get so emotionally just like and I start tearing up. I'm like, why? Why?
So the really cool thing about the unconscious mind is that it doesn't know the difference between fiction and reality, and it doesn't know the difference between you and me. So when we see like on American Idol somebody achieving their dreams, it makes us know that we can too. Right. And so it can bring up that emotion the same way it would be for us if we were the one having that success. Or if you're like watching Harry Potter and you like really resonate with Harry or, Hermione or whoever, your mind is like, oh, they're me and I'm them. So I can be just like them. Right. And so that's why that's honestly why we love like the underdog stories, is because especially people will tend to love underdog stories more when they're in a position of challenge. And it's like, oh, well, they overcame, so can I. And so it gives us a lot of empowerment by watching that. And then, I mean, music is emotional. And so it can, and there's plenty of sound therapy is definitely not my area of expertise, but personally have gone to like sound therapy or sound healing sessions, and like just the vibration opens up your energy centers, and so it gets things flowing, and that can bring up emotion that needs to be released or that needs to be felt.
So you do different guided meditations for the different seasons, right? I think, I don't know if you would call it seasons, like corresponding with the like astrological events. Maybe is that a better way to say it?
Yeah, so every month there's a full moon and a new moon. So I definitely put out meditations that align with like the energy of those moons. You can use the meditations really anytime during the year. If you're like, we just had when we just had a full moon in Gemini, at the time of the recording, and that was like a fairly chaotic moon for some people, but it pushed us to like really become honest with ourselves and really become truthful with ourselves, and like look at what dualities do we need to hold, where it seems like two opposing truths are true at the same time. And for us to have success, we need to be able to hold that duality. So, next year, the middle of the year, if it's not a full moon in Gemini, but you're like, that would be really beneficial for me, you can still go back and do that meditation. But I create those meditations just to help people kind of navigate the energies of the times. And then I have other meditations based on things that my clients have needed, whether it's like protecting their energy or receiving unconditional love. I have a ton of that out there.
Yeah, there was something you said that really resonated with me. And I think it was corresponding to the solar eclipse energy. And it was like that it's bringing chaos, but that's when we level up and step up to like the version of who we want to become is like through that chaos. And I really loved that.
Yeah, one thing I tell all of my clients is like, or anybody who will listen, really, is that confusion always precedes a breakthrough. Like if we take a seed and we plant it in the ground, it's going to look like chaos before it looks like the plant, right? Like the insides of the seed literally have to come spilling out in order for that seed to grow into the plant or the flower or the tree. And so it's the same for us. Like we have to, when we go to a new level, we have to break down the foundation that we've been standing on, because that foundation is full of things that no longer serve us. And so if we're rebuilding a city skyline and we've got some ugly buildings that don't fit in with the new aesthetic that we're creating, well, we have to blow up those buildings. That's going to look like a whole bunch of chaos and rubble, but then we rebuild off of that chaos to create a higher level of being. And so, if you're going through chaos or you're going through a state of confusion, like I don't know what I want, or I don't know what's right for me, like keep going, because you're actually on the right path. But most people get discouraged at that point, and that's where they want to quit.
Yeah, I imagine it's pretty painful to go through that kind of positive destruction, I guess is the best way to say, to break down those old habits and those old destructive, I guess, behaviors to have a healthier, that I think probably can be pretty painful, especially if it's something we've known for so long, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's called the dark night of the soul, which does not sound appealing for most people anyways, right? It's like, if you've ever heard of the hero's journey, that point of the hero's journey is called the death and rebirth. And that's why most people give in to temptation right before they go through that phase, because it's like walking through the fire. Who we were has to die for us to become who we're meant to be. If you think of the Matrix, like Neo has to die to become the one. Spoiler alert for people who haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen it by now, I'm guessing it's not on the top of your list. But Neo has to die to become the one, which is just a reconfiguration of the letters, right? And it's in that like death and rebirth that he goes from doubting himself, like, oh, the oracle said that I'm not the one, to, oh, I am the one. Look at what I can do now. Like I just came back. And so we have to break down things, and it can be as painful as we want it to be, but when we have tools to navigate and when we really lean into like compassion and self-love, it doesn't have to be difficult. And I think the more that you go through it, like the more that you level up, the more you're like, oh, been here before, I know the protocol, I can just move through it a little bit faster. But the first time, it it is going to suck, and you are going to want to run away. And that's where you need like support, whether it's friends or family or people you meet on Facebook or a coach or whatever. You need support to navigate it, because there will be times where you're just going to want to be like, why am I doing this again?
And is that like with the dark night of the soul, how does that tie into like the five core wounds? I know you talk about that on your channel a bit.
Yeah, so the dark night of the soul is us really getting honest with ourselves about what we've been through and coming to terms with our responsibility in it. And I'm going to say, like, there's always somebody who's like, I was abused and it's not my fault. Like, I was abused growing up by my stepmom. And I would never say that it's anybody's fault that they were abused. What I will say is that we have a responsibility to heal it, and we have a responsibility to get honest with ourselves and let ourselves see how those events, how we've been carrying them around. Because for me, I would just carry this chip on my shoulder. I was like the angriest person ever. And people who know me now are like, there's no way. And I'm like, seriously, like as a teenager and as a kid, like if you were in arm's distance and you triggered me in any way, like you would either get punched or slapped. And it would happen before I even knew what was going on. Like it was such a subconscious response. I would just like reach out and be like, whack. And then like both of us, our jaws would drop because I wouldn't be able to believe that I did it. But I was so angry And I didn't realize that every toxic relationship, friendship, and like dating relationship, and even business partnership were because of that trauma. And so, like my very first dark night of the soul, the biggest thing that probably hurt me was recognizing that all of my problems, all of my failed businesses, all of my failed relationships, all of my problems had one common denominator, and that was me. And so it wasn't that, I was responsible or that that I asked for the abuse that I experienced, but I was carrying it around and allowing it to be an excuse to settle in relationships, to be so disconnected from my intuition that I would get a gut feeling like, this person's not a good person, but then I would ignore it anyways and be like, no, let me fix them so that they have to love me. Right? Like people pleasing was my ultimate behavior and pattern that I fell back into. But until I got honest with myself and realized like I was allowing these situations to keep happening because of the choices that I continued to make and the things that I continued to allow for, then nothing would change.
That's a lot of introspection that can be really hard to swallow for a
Yeah.
lot of people and to admit.
It's not going to happen like in one night. Like the dark night of the soul is like a multiple week or a multiple month. Like you have to break it down into chunks to be able to digest it, because otherwise it is just like, it can be too overwhelming. And that's why like now I tell people you really have to lean into self-compassion and like self-acceptance, and all those skeletons that you would rather just shove in a closet and hide from everybody. Those are the ones like you have to invite them out, have a tea party with them, like get to know them, so that you see that they're not so scary and everybody has them.
I think that's why I'm scared of going under hypnosis, because I'm like, my poor hypnotist, like 5 demons are going to jump out of me and they're going to have to call an exorcist. Like, that's just, I don't know. It's probably better. It all stays tucked in. I don't know who's going to jump out.
I want that all recorded. I want to see video, like seriously.
I don't know what I carry with me. Okay, so then what are the 5 core wounds? Because I think it relates to childhood, right?
Yeah, so 95% of the belief systems and baggage that we carry as adults happen between the ages of 0 and 7. 0 being conception to about 7 years old. That's when we're most impressionable. And it does start at conception. We share a bloodstream with our mom. So if our mom has trauma or is experiencing trauma, then get hit with the same hormones. There's actually, I'll just say before I tell you the 5 wounds, there's a really good book called It Didn't Start With You. And it actually talks about in that book, like when your grandma was 5 months pregnant with your mom, the precursor egg that you would eventually become you was already present in your mom. So there was a point in time where there's like 3 generations sharing the same environmental space. And we can say the same for our paternal line. Like it's just crazy how far back we can trace it. But the 5 core wounds, which may be yours, or they may, like I said, come from a grandparent or a parent, are abandonment. So believing that you will be abandoned. And this could be like physically abandoned, or it could be emotionally abandoned. If you do something or say something, or you are, you're yourself, you'll be abandoned. Rejection. So believing people will reject you or won't accept you. And this may be based on like actual experiences of abandonment and rejection, and the other ones that we're going to talk about. Or it could be, I believe this will happen if I do X. Betrayal. So believing, some people have everybody lets me down, everybody hurts me, everybody betrays me. The 4th is the injustice wound. So if you've ever found yourself saying like, it's not fair that I had rules that my sibling didn't, or it's not fair that this person makes more money than I did, that's the injustice wound. And then the last one is the humiliation wound. So believing that you'll be humiliated if you do X, or if you say this thing.
So when we're working with the core wounds, or when you're helping guide people through them, is it through a combination of the NLP and hypnosis, and like you use a combination of modalities to help with that?
Yeah. So the way that I look at it is, we know the body holds on to unresolved negative emotions. So imagine that you have like a trash can in your mind, And every unresolved negative emotion goes in that trash can. So then let's say the first time that you felt anger, you were 2 years old. Your mom took you to the toy store, wouldn't buy you the toy that you wanted. You created an imprint, what we call a gestalt, of anger at 2 years old, and you started filling that bucket. Now, every time you felt how that 2-year-old felt, you add a link onto the chain. And what we know is that part of your psyche actually got stuck at 2 years old. So if you've ever heard of people talk about like inner children or doing inner child work, that's what they mean, is part of your psyche got stuck at a younger version age of you when you didn't have the resources or knowledge to deal with that emotion. So that chain of anger can go for as many times as you've ever felt angry in your life, which is for most people a lot. And that's just anger. And every time you add a link to the chain, you're filling the bucket. Then let's say the first time you felt fear, you were 1. Same thing. Every time you felt how that 1-year-old felt, you add a link to the chain. Part of your psyche gets stuck at 1. Sadness, maybe 3. Same thing with that. Guilt, shame, maybe 7 or 8. So now we have all these chains of emotions. Our bucket is full, probably before we even finish high school. We have all these inner children, and whenever the bucket's full and we're feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, and not even just emotionally stressed, but the body's carrying a lot of stress, our mind reverts back to the ages that we were when those imprints were first created. So road rage is not how an adult responds to being cut off. That's the 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum for not getting what they wanted, right? And that's just like horizontal chains. Then we've got like the vertical columns, and those are all related to a person. So you would have a column related to mom. Every time she's ever made you feel angry, fearful, sad, guilty, ashamed. So in the work that I do, what we initially start out with people is we'll do what I call a clearing session, but essentially releasing the emotional baggage around mom, then releasing around dad, then releasing around like any exes or siblings or bullies or anybody who's played a negative role in your life. And then we'll clear out the emotions. So we'll look at anger, we'll look at fear, sadness, guilt, and shame. And then from there, we'll look at, what are the beliefs that were created from these childhood wounds? So like, it's not safe for me to be successful. My family will judge me if I make too much money. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Like whatever beliefs are there for people, then we'll work through those.
And so we're talking about like the 2-year-old road rage and the different emotional responses. So how does that relate to shifting our emotional states? I know you speak to that on YouTube. Does that help with things like that where these old traumas are I'll get that statement out. Our old traumas are surfacing in emotional reactions?
Yeah. So when people overreact, and I'll share a story with you in a second on this, when people are overreacting, they're basically taking like a lifetime worth of that emotional buildup and attempting to release it into one situation, but then they're not like fully releasing it and they're just creating another link. So a couple years ago, my husband and I lived in an apartment building. And we were friends with the couple across the hall. And they were getting kicked out of the building for something really stupid. And my husband was like livid about it. And he went down and he talked to management and he like exploded. And the neighbor was like, I understand like y'all care about us and like we're good friends and whatnot. But like, I feel like his response to this situation is like over the top. And I was like, he's been picked on by bullies his entire life. And what he sees now is you guys, his friends, are being picked on by bullies. And so he's got like 32 years of being picked on and all that emotional baggage that now he's directing into this one situation. So is he overreacting from like a logical perspective? Yes. But from an emotional perspective, he's just had like all of this buildup. It's like a volcano building up, building up, building up. At some point, it's going to spew out. And that's what happens for most people. But they don't actually end up fully releasing it from the body because they don't have the tools to do that. So they'll like explode in a situation of road rage and then shove it all back down. And they don't actually deal with the root of the problem, like allowing that 2-year-old, for example, to heal, so they haven't really healed from the root.
So then what does it mean when you talk about shifting our emotional state? Is that the work, putting in the work to resolve that? Or is that something we do in the moment when we're feeling an emotion that is heavily charged?
So it's a combination of both. Like the more healing work that you do, the more emotional release that you do, the less you're going to feel overwhelmed and controlled by your emotions. But then at the same time, I share techniques with clients to be able to, when they feel themselves being triggered, rather than acting on the trigger and potentially damaging a relationship or saying something they'll regret, or, throwing away an opportunity, giving them tools to like manage the emotion in the moment, recognize the trigger, manage the emotion, and then we can come back and work on healing that trigger so that it's not so intense next time.
I definitely need that. Just
Yeah.
not
And
gonna lie.
like in the moment, to share a quick tool with the listeners, is like there's a technique called box breathing. And so this is a really powerful technique that you can use in the moment. The Navy SEALs use it to manage their arousal levels before they go in to like a potentially hostile situation. What you do is you breathe in for 4 counts. So it's like you're drawing a box with your breath. You breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, and hold for 4 counts. And you do that about 4 times, a minimum of 4 times, but more if you need. And then really anytime your exhale is longer than your inhale, it'll switch off your fight or flight system in the body so that you can, because when you're in fight or flight, you actually can't access your logic and reason. And so we can use our breath, exhales longer than the inhale or the box breathing, to pull us, to turn off the switch on the fight or flight, pull us out of that so that we can say, okay, how do I want this situation to go? And what do I need to do or say in this moment to get that outcome that I want?
Do you ever wonder, because you do such awesome work with the mind, where these mechanisms, because ultimately they feel like, to me, coping mechanisms to an extent, what their initial purpose served? Because I do feel like certain things initially served us a purpose when it came to like survival, right? Survival of the species and survival of our individual self. And so I oftentimes wonder what these things that we currently work with, right, that we're currently trying to unblock and we're currently trying to navigate through, what their initial purpose was, what it served in the past that now inhibits us. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, like, the scientific answer is survival. Like, even say, like, a pattern of like perfectionism. At some point in your life, you learned that being perfect was more likely to gain you acceptance. And acceptance at a very primal level equals survival, right? If we get rejected from our tribe, now we're isolated, we're on our own. Whereas if you are accepted by your tribe, then you're more likely to survive. So from the scientific level, it's really survival. Like every study points back to us surviving. From a spiritual level, if we look at it from that level, there are many schools of thought that believe that Earth is the best school for our soul's evolution. And there's a lot of there's a ton of books out there. But Plato was actually the first one to write about it, talking about how our soul, before it comes into this life, it chooses our purpose, it chooses our body, and we either have to overcome the influence of our body to reach our purpose, or our body helps us achieve our purpose. We choose our parents. And for most of us, because our parents are souls having their own journey, we choose our parents and we have to overcome their influence to reach our purpose. We choose the 4 most negative and the 4 most positive things to happen to us. The negative things are unlocking resources for us. I kind of think of life like a video game, like, and I only ever played Mario, so that's the only one I can ever reference. But like,
Can I just say you're easily becoming like my best friend? You've referenced Harry Potter, The Matrix, Mario. Like, I am feeling it. Keep on.
Awesome. I love it. But like in Mario, when I played Mario as a kid, like at the end of every level, you faced a new Bowser, right? And his castle became like harder to navigate and he became more of a challenge to beat, but you had more resources as Mario, right? Like you could have different versions of Mario that you could go into and more lives and whatnot. And so the negative things are unlocking those resources within us, where the positive things give us the excitement and the confidence and the courage to keep going. And so there's that kind of spiritual school of thought that believes that like we chose all of this before we got here for our soul to gain a lesson or to pay back karma that it needed to evolve to the next level.
And maybe it's both.
Maybe it is. I think it probably is.
Because we say survival, but that's also survival of our soul to an extent, right? Helping us grow and expand so that it keeps on and it keeps growing. So I could see it as both. I love it. I love the Plato explanation. I haven't read any of that since philosophy class in college, and I miss it. I was just thinking I should go back and read some philosophy books.
Yeah, and there's like if you struggle with Plato, there's some newer, I can't remember the names of the books off the top of my head, but there's like newer age books around the soul's journey. And if you Google the soul's journey books, you'll probably find them.
I'm a nerd. I'm all about it. I absolutely will. And you also have a few books that you've written, right?
I have one. I'm writing my second right now. So my first
Okay.
book, I don't know if I can swear or not, but my first book was
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Stop Being a Selfish Bitch was the first book that I wrote. And it was actually, I know it sounds like it's for women, but men get just as much from it. But it was really like my own personal challenge. So in 2017, I discovered that my two business partners were narcissists. I was forced to resign from the business like conglomerate that I had spent 4 years pouring my heart and soul into. Was living in Australia, and when I was forced to resign from the business, I lost my work visa, so I had to move back to Canada. I came back with like $3,000 to my name in a terrible economy up in Canada. And my family was like, well, you've done the business thing, didn't work out for you. You'd make a great receptionist. Just do that. And I could like feel like every time I went on like indeed.com, I could feel my soul dying. Like every time I looked at job listings, I was like, I feel my soul is dying. And so I was journaling one day and I was kind of like in a place of self-doubt and I was just journaling and I just it's like the pen started moving on its own. And it was just like, you've like witnessed some incredible like physical transformations and like life transformations from your clients. And so every day that you stay stuck, not sharing this gift with the world, is the day that there's somebody out there who doesn't resonate with Tony Robbins or doesn't resonate with Brendan Burchard or any of these other people in the same space. They're waiting for you. They need to hear your message because the way that you say it, the analogy that you use, whatever, is going to unlock the aha moment for them. And so every day that you stay stuck in your own fear and self-doubt is a day they don't hear you. So stop being a selfish bitch. So when I started my business back in 2018, I actually did like the Stop Being a Selfish Bitch project. And I was like, if I was just to take like fear and self-doubt, put it in a box up on the shelf and focus on every day talking to, whether that's through social media or through podcasts or articles or whatever, but sharing my message with one person who needed to hear it, how many lives would I touch? And I wanted to see like how many people I could impact in that first year. And just through people giving me $1 or more in the first year, I worked with over 133 people, not to mention like the following that I built on different social media platforms. So that's where the inspiration for that book came from.
That's so awesome. I love that you said that. I was talking to my husband earlier, and he said the same thing when I was talking about the. I'll scroll through TikTok just to because I've been curious about what's been popping up lately. I'm not really a TikTok user, but I'm not savvy, and I just discovered that you can scroll through lives of people you don't follow, and apparently TikTok's got my number because they've been putting like all the different metaphysical topics on there. So I'm scrolling through And I will stop and listen to the different mediums, astrologers, all the different things, and listen to them for about like 30 minutes to see what are they about? What are they offering? What are they talking about? And it's interesting. A lot of what is being told to people, whether they're using tarot cards or runes or pendulums, or I saw some lady throwing bones, like all of these things. I know I didn't know that was a thing, but they're giving life advice. Like the things that they're saying, it's not out of this world, right? It's life advice that I think a lot of people need to hear. And he made a really good point. He's like, whether it's Tony Robbins, and he used the same name, he's like, or someone else, a therapist, he's like, maybe this is who they're receptive to hearing it from. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's saying it. It matters, is the message being heard? Is the message impacting you and helping you in some way? So I think that's great. I think that there's more avenues than just one for people to start learning positive affirmations, but also like, hey, I got to clean up my shit a little. I got to clean up my life a bit in a good way, in a positive way.
Yeah, so I also certify people in NLP and hypnosis, and the first kind of couple rounds of students who came through my programs, they were like, I have to teach and like talk about NLP exactly the way that you do. And I'm like, but you don't, because if you're using my analogies or you're using my stories or talking about like you're trying to mimic me exactly, then people will just come and work with me. But there's somebody out there who doesn't resonate with my personality, or they don't like the sound of my voice, or they don't like the Harry Potter analogy or whatever. And they need your analogy about the Lion King or about, Dancing with the Stars or whatever it is. So like, we all have a message to share. I believe we all have a message to share. And the more that we hold it inside of us, because we don't sound like Tony Robbins, or we don't explain it in the same way as him, or, our core wounds from childhood are being triggered, there's somebody else out there that's not hearing it and their life isn't being impacted. And you might be saying like, oh, but I'm not a coach. Well, it could be that you make the best apple pie, or you do the best oil change in the world, and there's somebody who needs that, but you're just, stuck in your own stuff and not putting it out there, and somebody's life isn't being changed with that talent that you have. Like a lot of people talk about like, oh, what's my superpower? Do you like X-Men? Because I'm going to give you an X-Men analogy.
Oh, yeah.
You're married, right? No.
So,
oh man,
we love X-Men.
I used to give this analogy, and my husband was like, had never seen X-Men, and he was like, what? And so he started watching X-Men because of this analogy, and now he loves it. But if you
converted him,
yeah, if you remember the X-Men movie where they are like, all the kids go to Professor X's school, right? He's like just starting it up. I can't remember which one it is, but they're there like trying to hide their superpowers, because for them, like Superman doesn't go around saying like, oh, this is so cool, I can fly, or like Storm doesn't go, oh, like look at this cool party trick, I can, change the weather. They go, this is going to get me rejected because nobody else can do this, right? And so our superpowers are the same thing. It's the thing we take for granted. It's the thing that if, other people see in us and say, that's so cool that you can play the piano that well, or that's so cool that you are so good at this, I wish I was that. And you're like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. That thing that you're like, it's not that big of a deal, that's your superpower. And your message or your gift is connected to that in some way, but you have to recognize that's your superpower. For me, like I can read a book, I can hear a study about like, the mind or the body or whatever, and it's in there and I can use it to start helping people. And so I didn't realize like that not having to study for tests in high school was like my superpower, like my ability to retain information and then make it relevant to somebody in a way that they could use. Not like I could take the most random piece of information that I learned 10 years ago, put it with something I just read today, and put it together in a way that nobody's ever seen and make it relevant to somebody's life like I have today, right? Like using X-Men or Harry Potter or whatever it is, and making it so that people are like, oh, I get it now. Like that's my superpower. But in high school, when I was writing essays, I was like, oh, sweet, I can get an A on a test and not have to put in a whole lot of effort. But I didn't know that that wasn't normal.
That's just your way of life. That's just what you knew.
Yeah. And that's for everybody's superpower, like whatever it is.
I don't know my superpower. It hasn't been activated yet. I'm just kidding.
Mine is forgetting things as soon as I learn. So
Somebody call Professor X.
There you go.
Really, he knows everything. Just plug in, see what's going on. What's my power? Now, you mentioned, a lot of the work that we're dealing with, the inner child work and the trauma is stuff that happened as kids. So versus waiting to be an adult and dealing with like decades and decades of this, are we able to work with kids to start? Not necessarily the full on, dark night of the soul work and stuff like that, but is that something where like kids can start working on these coping mechanisms and emotional shifts so that they're set up for adulthood better?
Absolutely. I mean, kids are easier to work with, in my opinion, because their imaginations are better. And in order to get into your imagination, you need to use the unconscious mind. So they don't gatekeep their unconscious mind as much or as heavily. But absolutely, like my youngest client was 7. So it definitely is possible. And the beauty of I always tell parents, the best gift you can ever give your kids is your own healing. Because ultimately, their nervous system is going to regulate to yours. And so if you're super dysregulated or you're super anxious, they're going to be regulating to anxiousness. And what the parents suppress and don't deal with, the kids express. The best thing that we can do for our kids is to figure out how to regulate our own nervous system. Start using that box breathing, start using the deep breaths or the longer exhales, and then teach them that. If they're playing with their sibling and they get upset that the sibling stole their toy, teach them the breath work and show them you doing it when you get stressed out, because then they're going to learn how to deal with it. Kids pick up far more than we give them credit for. We just have to expose them to the right things.
Yeah, and it's interesting, we're all, at the end of the day, we're all still individuals. So we can be in the same scenario, but internalize the trauma differently. I think as parents, we think we can hide. We can hide our stress and hide our everything from our children. Oh, they don't know I'm feeling that way. And it's oh man, kids are so perceptive. They're more open, like you said, to feeling the energy around them and feeling the emotions and everything around them. They pick up more than we do. By the time we're adults, we kind of mute a lot of that down, whereas they haven't gone through that yet. And so they sense it. Even when we think, oh, I've got a good poker face, they don't know. And it's oh, they know.
They definitely do.
Now, you talked about clearing energy. Is this the quantum work that you reference on your YouTube? Is that what you mean when you say you clear energy? Is it the quantum field stuff, or is that something completely different?
The best way to explain it is that they've discovered that our heart doesn't just pump blood, but it sends out and it receives vibrational frequencies. So if I put you two in the same room back to back, and then Ashley, we blindfolded you and soundproofed you so you couldn't hear a thing that was going on. And then I did something or I said something to really piss John off and we had you both hooked up to heart rate monitors. John's heart rate would start to change and put out these micro vibrations in between beats to match his anger. And even though you couldn't feel or hear anything going on or see anything, your heart rate would start to change to match his. And so we hear a lot and we see these memes on social media, your vibe attracts your tribe, but your tribe also affects your vibe. And so if you're carrying a lot of trauma or emotional baggage, then the vibrational frequency you're sending out, which is essentially your energetic signature that you're sending out into the world, is going to be a lower vibration. Lower vibration being hopelessness, powerlessness, anger, sadness, hurt, any of those things. And so I used to, before I understood this, I used to say it's almost like narcissists can sniff out somebody who has a lack of boundaries, and energetically they can, right? They pick up on these low vibrational energies. Whereas once you start to heal and you release the emotional baggage and you learn how to set boundaries and you step into your power, then you change the vibrational frequency that you are vibrating at, or the energetic signature you're sending out. It's almost like there's an electrical fence that the narcissist can't get through now, or the people who have ill intentions, whether consciously or unconsciously, can't get through. But that's also when we talk about manifestation, how we start pulling in different things to us. Like the higher our vibration is, the higher the level of things that we're going to pull into us. Like I always used to, whenever I'd make extra money, this was before I did any of my healing. If I had like got a refund for my taxes, or I like had a week where I had more money left over, I'd be like, oh, I could pay off more of my debt, or I could pay off this bill, or I could sign up for this thing that's going to move me ahead. But what if something happens? And it's like every time, what if my car breaks down, or what if something bad happens and I need that money? Well, what did I manifest every time? Like something would break
The
down.
bad stuff.
Right.
Something would happen.
Because that was the electronic signature, the electrical signature that I was putting out into the world. And so when we clear energy, it's a combination of like the emotional healing, but almost like that changing emotional state that we talked about before as well. Like, how do we recognize like, oh, this person's really negative, I don't want to be in their energy? Or what are things that I can do in the moment to raise my vibration? Like maybe it's the breath work. And so when I talk about like morning routines with people, I know that there's like every guru and his dog talks about like get up at 5 a.m. and do this and this and this. And I'm not a believer in that, because for me, you have to decide like what is the energy that you want to be at for that day. Like I just am coming off like a week and a half of my son going through his first cold. Haven't been getting a lot of sleep because he's been super congested at night. And so he's been keeping me awake at night. So this weekend I was like, I just want to chill. Like I just want to like quote unquote veg out and watch Hallmark movies and like do nothing. Like I just need to rest, right? Whereas like other days, like tomorrow morning, I'll get up and maybe I'll want my energy to be productive for the day, or inspired or creative. So then I'll do activities in my morning routine that allow me to feel more creative, or allow me to feel more productive, or set me up for productivity. And so your morning routine for you to create the best one is firstly you to say, okay, what are the emotional states that I most want to feel? Like if I want to feel creative, then instead of doing a meditation, I might do like a dance party. And like more, instead of doing like squats and deadlifts in the gym, I would do like more like flowy type movements. So maybe like a bit of yoga, maybe a little bit of interpretive dance, who knows, right? That's going to unlock creativity. But productivity, if I'm like, I want to feel like a badass today, or like I want to get into like hustle, like super focus mode, well, going to the gym and deadlifting, that's going to put me in that mode. So that's what I would do that day. So, setting your energy and clearing your energy is about understanding the emotional states that you want to be in, and then figuring out what are the things that you can do, eat, say, the people that you can be around, the beliefs that you have that align with those energetic states, and implementing those.
So it sounds like a lot of self-awareness, and also intention, just making sure that you're listening to yourself, but also following through with your intentions. I love that. I love that so much. I'm going to try that. What do I want to be today? This is what I'm doing.
There's a great book called The Alter Ego Effect. And he actually talks about, he works with like Olympic athletes, and he talks about how he gets his athletes to like create an alter ego. And I was actually doing this with some of my like teenage clients before I even read his book, where I'd be like, what's a superhero that you like? Batman. Okay. Why do you love Batman? Like, what are the top 3 qualities of Batman that you like? Oh, his courage, this. And so I would get them to like visualize themselves like stepping into Batman's suit and becoming Batman before they like went to play sports, or before they had to face their bully at school, or whatever it was. And like that's what this book is all about, is like creating an alter ego for yourself. Like you can literally get up and ask yourself today, like, which X-Men do I want to be? Like who?
I am Ashley Luna Goddess.
There you go.
That's my alter ego.
Love it. People love dress up, right? That's why like cosplay and Halloween are so popular, is because we get to dress up and be somebody else, but we can do that every day.
Yeah, I was gonna say for the longest time I was always Batman as a kid. Batman was my dude. So yeah, I definitely can identify with that.
I always was a princess, and it's not because I thought I was a princess. I honestly, like, let's get a little violin moment, but I grew up not being a pretty child, and I grew up not being considered pretty or graceful or any of those things. And so it's just like you're the tomboy, you're the this, you're not pretty. And so for me, in Halloween, it's like for this day, for this one day every year, I can be pretty, I can be graceful. And then now that I'm older, it's like I'll be whatever I want, you MFs. Like I know that's kind of aggressive, but
I like it.
I think
I
you
do too.
spend so long being told what you're not that finally one day it's like, you know what? I'll tell you who I am. You don't tell me who I am or who I am
Absolutely.
not. So
I love it.
Yes.
wow, this has been a really great episode, and I know it's getting later in the evening. Tiffany, where can people find you and your work, and maybe how to get a hold of you to work with you?
Yeah. So I'm on every social media platform. So if you just go and type in Tiffany Toombs, you'll find me. I generally am the first one in the search because I do put out so much content. And then if you want to connect with me and ask questions directly, you can just go email me at tiffany@bluelotusmind.com. And I receive all of those and I answer them directly.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And are you open to working with different ages, or is there a specific group that you prefer to work with?
Yeah, I do, and I have worked with all ages. Like I said, my youngest client ever was 7, and my oldest has been 87. So age wise, gender wise, I've worked with the whole spectrum. I do have programs that gear more towards like women and moms, but I have other programs that are open for everybody as well.
Well, are there any last thoughts before we wrap it up? This has been so great. I just want to say that I've loved this. I love the references. You speak to my geeky heart, but you also explain things in a way that makes sense to my brain. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. And I would say like the biggest message would be just, the nuggets that I've dropped around the exercises that you can do, like just start implementing those and see how quick change can happen. Like, we talked about the dark night of the soul kind of sucks and, it's going to be a little bit of a process, but it doesn't have to drag on forever. Like you don't have to, you can feel shifts and changes as soon as you start implementing these things. And so just find one nugget and just implement that one and start seeing the change that one made, and then implement the next one and then the next one. And pretty soon you're going to look back and you're going to be miles ahead of where you are now.
And be compassionate with yourself. I think that's what I heard most from you. Be compassionate with yourself.
Yes.
And
I
that's
have
what
to
got to me
remember
the
that.
most. Yeah, that got to me
Yeah.
the most
Yeah.
because I definitely am not,
Yeah.
at least not all the time, but yeah.
I don't take it easy.
Nobody's broken. Nobody needs fixing. It's just about loving and accepting ourselves at a deeper level.
Thank you so much. That's such a powerful message that I myself oftentimes forget. I give grace to the world, but I forget to give it to myself. So, wow, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right, John Thomas, you want to bring us home?
Again, thank you, Tiffany, for coming onto the show. I definitely learned a lot and will be going to your YouTube channel again because I was on there before and there's just so many different videos on all kinds of different things that I know are definitely going to help me out. So, to all the listeners, definitely go check it out. And again, to all of our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast with your host. I'm John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
And if you have any episode suggestions, questions, or comments, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And if you haven't done so already, please like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one crazy or amazing moment.
Until next time.